This program is brought to you by the following proud sponsors. The Alltech Media Group, the region's leading multimedia video production and marketing company, creating powerful and innovative marketing strategies that deliver exponential returns. And by California CEO Online Video Business Magazine, providing California's executives and regional leaders with economic development resources and regional branding solutions. And by StudioCast Pros, taking your web branding strategies to a new level by creating world-class online programs proven to engage audiences and enhance profits.
Good morning, everybody. It's another beautiful day in Riverside County, and today we have a couple of 1 Million Cups presenters. The first one is Dwayne Nelson with Clusters. Dwayne?
Thank you, Jay. Hello, everyone. Today I'm going to be talking to you about Clusters. Clusters is an online feed reader. It is for helping you get all of your information online organized. I know it's a problem that everyone has. I was a heavy user of Google Reader and some of the other readers. Google Reader's since been discontinued. And in my time using feed readers, I noticed that I was getting lots and lots of entries, somewhere along the line of maybe 900 to 1,000 a day. This is obviously very, very difficult to cover. And so I was thinking it made sense to really pursue some sort of a solution for this. So the general case of too much information, what I've done here is I've basically listed a whole bunch of categories, and this represents a lot of the categories of things that people read online. And what I'm presenting this page here for, I mean, it's obvious, it's intended to be too busy, and the point of it is, even if you only care about a very small subset of these items, you're probably going to have a lot more information available to you than you're willing or able to read. So the point is we really need some way of getting this stuff organized. And a typical feed reader, you'll get a lot of the items that you sign up to via RSS, and I'll explain why RSS in a second, in reverse chronological order. This is important, this is helpful because it gives you the most recent information first, and you can scroll down and find out what you've missed. The problem is you end up getting it all kind of, as far as topics go, it's all kind of mixed up. The reason it's mixed up, and this is the explanation on RSS, is when you sign up to a number of RSS feeds, you're getting these things again in a reverse chronological order. But if your topics are business, cooking, and movies, you don't know which one's going to come in when. So on to the project. I started this project, which is now the service, with two goals. The first one was to build something that would address the problem of information overload for myself. This was going to be a technological solution, and I had something really grand in mind, but I decided to start small and see how that works. The second thing I wanted to do is learn how to turn this technology into a business that's profitable. And so I found out that it takes more than these two steps. There's actually kind of a step in between, and I'll get to that in a second. So the first of these goals was to build the functioning service. And the service, as it stands, it does what it was intended to do, which is what Clusters does is automatically sort your feed according to topic. So I use text analytics, and it reads everything that's in your feed entries, everything, including everything that you've bookmarked, and anything that somebody sent to you, because Clusters users are able to send each other feed entries. I have a rolling window so that you aren't necessarily going to look for items to delete. So if you've missed something, basically don't worry about it, because I wanted it to be low stress. But there's a flexible expiration policy, so you don't necessarily have to have everything expire at the same time. For example, certain things like you might have a really, really hot recent news site, and what it's going to do is it's going to give you the most recent of the recent, and it might update that from time to time, but it's not necessarily doing a deep dive. So that you might set it so it's going to expire sooner, because information that's several days old on that site is not going to be as valuable. On the other hand, if you're looking at academic papers, those are going to hang around for a while, so you might want those to stick around for, I don't know, months, even a year. And the point in that is I have a setting for you can keep the last 10 entries, and that's enabling you to receive these entries without having to worry about them scrolling off your screen. So what the site does is it's able to take all of these things, regardless of where they've come from, and it's able to find the relationships between them and bring them together in a place where you can see. So here's an example cluster. What I've picked this one for a few reasons. One of the things is at the bottom here, I don't know if you're able to read this, but at the bottom it has a title, Rush Limbaugh thinks that it's basically talking about Ebola and something Rush Limbaugh said about it, but yet it's coming from CNN Financial News. So that disconnect is something that actually ends up defeating some of the categorization schemes of some of the existing feed aggregators. For example, on many of them, they allow you to categorize things by feed, by the feed source. And so if it's looking at CNN Financial News, it might be in a financial news category. And in a financial news category, you wouldn't necessarily expect to see things about Ebola unless there was some strong financial tie-in. So above this, you're seeing Apple acknowledges iCloud hacking in China. And so what you're seeing here is you have 3 stories beneath it that are all related to it, but they would have been things that showed up in the feed earlier. And so by showing up in the feed earlier, it isn't necessarily available on this view, but since something related to it popped up more recently, those are brought up and grouped with it. And one of the things that's really valuable about this is you can see it says man in the middle in some of the detail. It's giving you details that wouldn't be available unless you actually read the articles. So sometimes you get a lot of information without reading them. There's some drawbacks to organizing by computer. It's not always perfect. Sometimes it gets things wrong. But we believe the advantages really outweigh the disadvantages. First of all, it's fast and it's tireless. It's going to be it's chewing on this stuff all the time. It's always reading your feeds. It's not necessarily associating your person with them, but it's definitely reading them, profiling them, and figuring out what works together. This is while you sleep. This is pretty much all the time. And so when you get to the site, you're seeing what's presented to you is what makes sense without you having to spend the time to do this. In the future, I'd like to have some ability to have users also create clusters that make sense and share those with other users. I think a lot of the human expert opinions would be very, very helpful in this space. Goal 2, status, just where we are as far as a business. Beta launched in August. We're trying to tune the site right now according to user input, user feedback rather. And we're developing performance enhancements. We've got mobile apps going, Android and iOS, and we're considering ways to tie in with other systems as well. So the next steps, what I'm really looking for is developing some assets for marketing, whether it's graphics, whether it's just strategy. Also further building the community of users and refine the feature set to something that the users really care about. With that, I think I'll take questions.
Is it an intuitive system which you can learn? So like, you give an example of Rush Limbaugh. If I don't want to hear anything about Rush Limbaugh, and obviously I immediately delete or don't want that, will it learn as it goes along? So it's learning what I read and what I think is important, or does it have that capability?
There are a couple of things in there. The first thing is it does learn. It doesn't necessarily, right now, it doesn't necessarily learn what you care about and what you don't like. It's really learning what is in your feed. And by learning what's in your feed, if you change the composition of your feed by, let's say, adding a few sources that weren't there before, it's now going to take all of these sources and based on what information shows up in your feed as opposed to what information is going to somebody else's, it's forming categories that make sense. In the future, this is to answer the other part, in the future I plan to make it so that it's able to select feed like certain topics. As you saw the clusters before, it's able to select a cluster. The user would be able to select a cluster and say, okay, this is really important to me, put it at the very top, or this is not important to me at all, I don't ever want to see it. So anything that shows up in that category would just disappear. And that's actually a little bit more flexible than strict keyword systems, which would only find a keyword and discard something based on that.
Can you talk to us about what options are available for users to consume the information? Is it desktop or mobile or both?
Right. Currently, what we have is a desktop. It's basically a browser app. So it's a web app, and it has a mobile version of it as well. And it does run. It runs pretty well on the desktop. It runs a little bit slower on a mobile. But we are developing iOS and Android apps, and those are going to be running a lot faster. Plus, those will have the ability to save things locally on the phone or the tablet, and also notify the user if something really important comes in.
Yeah, can you, excuse me, please define like the ideal target market for this? I'm trying to understand if this is for me or not. You know, I click on Yahoo and get my information, and whatever pops up, you know, I might see, you know, something random, but this seems like it would be something I could hone in and get more what I'm looking for without going through all the other stuff. But who's the target market, and how would that work for me?
So initially I was thinking a target market might be journalists and bloggers. And the reason I selected that group is because I think that group is a group that would almost by definition consume lots of information, want to stay current on a lot of topics, want to know what other people have written on a certain topic. I really think more broadly that anybody who consumes a lot of information online could benefit from this. I know many people used RSS feeds in the past, and some of them have since moved on to social media or some of the portals. And there's some value in doing that, but I think the reason people were moving is because they were trying to reduce the overload. So they were trying to, like, if people would end up with, you know, feeds of 900 items, and when they see it, they're just like, it just feels like work. And so nobody wants to deal with that. Nobody wants to go through all that trouble. So I think a lot of the services, even some of the competing services that are coming out right now, are intending to address that, mostly by trying to select the most important items of the day and present those to you. I've found, though, that when you're having somebody else select the most important items of the day and present those to you, that you're possibly missing out, and it ends up giving you a little bit of a, perhaps a too generic view of what's actually going on. So you might find value if you have certain publications that you pay attention to that maybe mainstream media is not, or if you're finding if you are a subject matter expert in a specific area of industry, and if your content is coming in that's very specific to that industry, you're still going to get that clustered very, very nicely. It's going to be hard to find that anywhere else.
From a marketing point of view, I would think rather than focus necessarily on bloggers and the other group, to me, I think one of the biggest consumers would be the financial industry, brokers, investors, who are constantly looking for information, and they're usually looking for information from all angles. And I think from a marketing point of view, have you thought about maybe making that your core group to start with? Because if you're looking for financial investment, you're looking for it to grow, these are the groups that have the money and would probably find your product extremely valuable to them. Because again, an investor or a broker has to see this information from all angles, and he needs it for his living and to be able to serve his clients. So I think you might want to, or just an opinion, consider that, because I think that makes it much more marketable if it's not just it's giving me more information, but it's giving me more information to help me with my business and my clients. Have you thought about that?
Thank you. I mean, I think that makes a lot of sense. I haven't thought so much about that specific group, but I certainly will. One of the things that you're reminding me of is there was a marketing group that had contacted me. They were interested in possibly using it to help them spot occurrences of, say, products that they're providing marketing for in media. So as I'm scanning, so many different things, they're able to find, oh, there's my product, and then they're able to highlight those things and maybe, tweet about them or provide some other sort of link. And a lot of people have cared that way. And similar to, I guess, the financial industry, they're getting paid to know this stuff, so it helps them. Anyone who really, really needs to know something, I think, can possibly benefit from, having a nice, I guess, package of feeds that they're following. And this is going to help. I think this is going to help anyone who's covering a lot of feeds see what it's going to make things that are important seem to pop out.
From a marketing point of view, I see that because I have to prove to my client the ROI, and if I'm doing my public relations correctly and the feed it's showing up in feeds, right, I can show that to my client.
Right.
I'm probably a perfect target person for this because right now I get Google alerts. I get about 60 to 70 newsletters a day. I'm just overwhelmed. I used to use RSS, but I had this information overload problem where I was getting so much information, and me trying to go through and sort through it myself was just useless. So I'm kind of like Jamar, if I'm looking for general news, I go to Yahoo. But if I'm looking for specific information, I'm either going to my Google alerts or I'm going to all of the newsletters, but I don't have time to read all this stuff. So having something like this that'll pre-sort it for me would be huge.
Right, it's very, very helpful in that way. I'm just going to make one quick point on that. One of the things about Google Alerts and Twitter, Pinterest, and some of the other sites is a lot of these sites, they have some sort of an RSS component to them as well. So I know one of the things that I've been doing as I'm developing this and trying to see how people use it the best, I've been experimenting with a lot of these other forms and exporting RSS feeds from them. So I have Google Alerts set up for various things, and those get piped in through RSS to my feed reader, and so they all show up in the same place. So I'm getting all of the advantages I would have if I was doing a Google search all the time, but it only pops something up if something new arrives. So this is never going to be the best search solution, but I think because it's able to plug in via RSS to so many of these other components, I think that works out really well.
Question about I guess the social media integration of this, because I see another opportunity as well in terms of we have Facebook and Twitter and all these things, and even with my daughter, for example, and sort of monitoring her feeds and what's happening and what she's communicating with, or things about her, or different friends that I like to follow that are on these different, now I'm sort of trying to find them everywhere. It seems like this may be a good platform for that as well, in addition to the business side.
Absolutely. I mean, you mentioned, I think you mentioned Twitter, and it's one of the things I was delighted when I discovered that there are these ways of plugging in Twitter to this. So, if they're people that I would ordinarily be following, I'm able to take their Twitter feed, bring it through, and so now I'm seeing everything. And when I click on it, I should have mentioned before, when I click on it, any of the links, it goes directly to whatever the underlying site is. So you're not getting around it. In fact, I don't even display images. The images would display there. This is intended to be a way of crunching down or helping you get through a high volume. And so being a high volume thing, I didn't really want to have images there because in my own browsing, I found that it slows things down quite a bit. But I'll mention one other thing about social media. As I mentioned before, users of clusters are able to send articles and entries to each other on the system. If they're sending it to somebody who's not on the system, it can go to them via email. But what I would like to do in the future is also have some tie-ins with Facebook and Twitter, because what I'm finding is a lot of people who are finding really interesting things, they are sharing them through social media. And I'd like to be part of that ecosystem as well. Just like I can receive them that way, I'd like to be able to send them that way, because I think it is a give and take.
So one of the goals that you have is figuring out how to make this a business that generates revenue. So have you come up with any kind of revenue model yet?
Well, One of the things that's been going through my head is the various ways that this could possibly turn into a revenue generating business. And one of the ways that's probably most obvious would be via subscription. I think users right now, I think a lot of the competing services are free or apparently free. And so I would need to be able to, I feel like I would need to be able to develop a set of high value users to be able to command a subscription fee. One of the benefits here is that the more users that use the system, the more feeds the system knows about. And the more feeds the system knows about, the easier it is for users to discover feeds that they weren't already aware of. So that's one thing that may support a subscription model. But in addition to that, I was thinking there could be sponsored content. In this case, most of the content is actually from various other sites, and that's common. But what I'm providing, my content, is organization. So I'm taking all of these things that the system is able to see, and I'm presenting them in a way that the users can appreciate. And so I believe that that could support ad revenue.
So the ad model is definitely, viable if you grow your base big enough that the advertisers see a value. The subscription model is tough because, unless you can really show a value to the user, they're going to go with a free service. That's just, we're all used to the internet and all the different values it can provide basically for nothing. So that's kind of a hard sell. But I think, like I say, I see a value here. And so I guess the question is, how is the best way to monetize it? So given all that, what can the Million Cups community do to help you with what you're doing? Is there a way to sign up for clusters and start using it and see if we want to do it? Or
Absolutely. So the URL is here. It's clusters.com, clusters with 2 S's at the end. And what I'm thinking is, one of the things that would help me the most is the system it's still in beta, and as it develops, I'm basically making a lot of changes in response to feedback from users. So if a user is going to try and use it for something, if they're confused by anything or if they're not able to find what they're looking for, that's the sort of information I'm really looking for, because I'm able to make changes in the system to make it faster, clearer, and so on. And so I think that would benefit quite a bit. Also, to the extent that other people that might be interested or that consume a lot of information, definitely let them know as well, and it's something that would certainly help out. Finally, I think one of the things that could be extremely helpful is people that believe certain groups of feeds go together well. Like right here in the Inland Empire, I'm trying to develop a set of feeds that if somebody who's new to clusters wants to get informed on some of the startup activity that's going on locally, I could basically essentially give them a package of feeds that appear all at once. Right now, new users are greeted with CNN, ESPN, and a few other things, just because I didn't want a new user to go to a blank page. But it would be ideal if they could find something of local interest to them, and I think it would feel a lot more personal, and they would be able to relate to it quite a bit more.
there you go. Well, thanks, Dwayne.
Thank you.
Thanks, everybody.
This program was brought to you by the following proud sponsors: the Alltech Media Group, the region's leading multimedia video production and marketing company, creating powerful and innovative marketing strategies that deliver exponential returns. And by California CEO Online Video Business Magazine, providing California's executives and regional leaders with economic development resources and regional branding solutions. And by StudioCast Pros, taking your web branding strategies to a new level by creating world-class online programs proven to engage audiences and enhance profits.